Well, welcome everyone to today's episode of TMI Advice You Didn't Want. Today we're going to dive into the wonderful world and wacky world of telepathy. Recently I have been listening to a podcast called Telepathy Tapes, and it is fascinating. And we're going to talk a little bit about what's on there, but also just probably dive into and go on all of the bunny trails that we tend to go on to with just telepathy in general. So in case we haven't met, my name is Karen.
And my name is Ashley, and I definitely enjoy this conversation a lot. I'm excited to hear what you have to say too.
Yeah, so I've got a friend. So this is what got me into this in the first place. I have a friend who has a kid that is autistic. Okay. And so the telepathy tapes are about autistic kids that have telepathy. And so, one thing that is really eye opening about the telepathy tapes is that all autistic kids, all of them, are telepathic. And many of them want us to understand that we are also telepathic, but on some level, we forgot how to use that skill set because we got so, like, the best way I could explain this is we get so plugged into our 3D reality that we forget that we're connected to a greater consciousness. That's probably the best way I could describe that because, like, I truly believe we all have this capability. 100% all of us do. It's the question is, are we connecting with that consciousness? And one thing that the kids on the telepathy tapes talk about is that they're here because they want to help raise the awareness of the world right now. And this honestly, like, was super eye opening to hear because I'm like, you hear in the statistics how many people more than ever before are diagnosed with autism. And so when I heard the kids, like many of them saying the same thing, no, we're here to help raise the consciousness of the earth, I was like, oh my God, they're here not because of all these shots, not because of the food system. Yes, they can play a part. That's not what I'm saying, but they are here because they want to raise the consciousness of the earth. And so that's why we have more and more of them than ever before, because they're all capable of doing this. And they haven't forgotten that they're connected. And so I was listening to one of them yesterday, and they were talking about how, like, this kid just had a really hard time interacting with his own body, right? Like, this is the biggest difference that I view currently in my current state of understanding is that somebody that's autistic, they're not plugged into 3D reality the same way that we are. And so they're able to reach those higher levels of consciousness. But coming into this body is like so overwhelming for them because they're like, how do I even control this thing? Like, it's just completely out of their awareness. So I think, like, the beautiful thing about having autistic people is that they can teach us and we can teach them at the same time, right? Like, it's about finding that balance and understanding that we're capable of so much more than we think we are, and helping them understand that they're capable of interacting also with this 3D reality. So I really think, like, after listening to the telepathy tapes, I really think that, like, the future of humanity is bright because there's so many of them that just want to be understood of how smart they really are. Like, the episode I was listening to today was basically talking about how many of them are savants, and a savant is someone that knows something without ever have being taught that thing,
Mhm.
right? So they just know. Like, so this girl on this episode, she could speak Spanish, but she, like, nobody taught her to speak Spanish, but she knew how, and she knew like 100 different languages is what she said too, which is wild, right? And these people, many of them are not, like, they're not verbal. The only way they can truly communicate is with, like, spelling. So they spell out on a letterboard what they want to say. And so what's just so fascinating though is hearing the kids talk about how they can interact with each other telepathically all those autistic kids can interact with each other telepathically, but they can also interact with their parents or people around them telepathically. Like they can actually read your thoughts, not necessarily your thoughts, but your energy, your emotions, and they know exactly what's going on. And like the other I could go on for days and days, so I'm going to shut up in a second. But the last thing I want to say is what's cool is how much testing they've done on these kids too. So they will literally have the mom or the dad or whoever randomly choose on a random number generator on their phone, randomly choose a number. And then the kid has to pick out what the number is. And 100% of the time, the kids are right, which is so fucking wild. Like you look at a lot of people that are very intuitive and just like very connected to understanding other people. Even they have a hard time getting 100% accuracy. Like these kids are 100% accurate, which just goes to show what we truly are capable of. And we just forgot that we were capable of.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and I think it's cool like that you mentioned that like number generator too, because so like my path has been a lot. There's been a lot of little places in it. But right when I basically stepped off of the, okay, I no longer believe in God,
Mm.
I was introduced to um Reiki right before that. And so my Reiki master believed in God and believed in Reiki.
Hmm.
And then right after that, I moved away from God completely. And at that time, I found out my friend, when he lived in Cuba, he was a medium.
Hmm.
And it was like I had been friends with him for years and I had no idea. And he was like, "Oh, well, if you're interested, let's do stuff." And I'm like, "Okay." And so we started practicing telepathy, and that was one of the things. And so we literally go out to a bar and just hang out, and we would think of random numbers, and the other person would have to guess. And we didn't test, but and so we like he gave tips and tricks essentially of how to learn how to pass information from me to him and to receive from him to me.
Hmm.
And
And what did he say? I'm curious.
so it's kind of like moving air kind of thing. So you're visualizing the, like, say you pick the number four, you're visualizing the four like in your third eye and you're pushing it to him.
Hmm.
And then you're opening up yourself to receive it. And
Gotcha.
it's like feeling thing. And so yeah, so that's what we would do. And then we would do like scenery too. So like the one time like his wife was there and my friend was there. The one time I think she visualized a scene and was passing the scene to us. And so it was her going through a valley of mountains in a lilac field. And the sun was shining and all that kind of stuff. And so like for myself, I would be like, oh, I see like lots of green with purple and lots of light coming in and like that kind of stuff. And so you would kind of like slowly pick it up. And I had no idea. Like it could have been anything. Like another example of a scene was sitting at a bar with red booths. And there was more like fine detail, but I don't remember what it is anymore.
Yeah.
Um, and so yeah, we would practice like that kind of stuff and sending it to each other. And then I've even done this with my kids or my partner where I'll send them numbers like when we're cuddling in bed kind of thing.
Hmm. Yeah. I mean, I would definitely say like my husband and I are 100% telepathically connected in the fact that we will decide we want to do something fun in our own head. And then somehow the other person is like, hey, do you want to do this? And it's like, oh my God, like it happens constantly, all
Yeah.
day, every day kind of thing. And it's
Yeah.
like, oh yeah, how did you know that that's what I wanted to do? Right.
Yeah.
And it's like, so on some level, like I would say the beautiful thing about what you said is that you were like opening yourself to receive and they were sharing, like open to share basically. But the beautiful thing that I think these autistic kids want us to understand is that we can just be open at all times to receive. And
Yeah.
we don't have to focus on it, right? Like, this was something that my friend and I were talking about yesterday, who has the autistic son, that told me about the telepathy tapes. She was like, I just have to work really hard in order to get connected with my son for me to read his mind, right? But he doesn't have to work hard at all because he's already open to that. He's already connecting to that level of energy. And I truly believe that, like, I truly believe the future of humanity is bright because there's so much of this stuff happening right now. And they're like, let's just say 5 years ago, hearing like this telepathy tapes probably wouldn't be as popular as it is right now, right?
Yeah.
And just it's exponentially more and more of this kind of evidence is coming out, and more people are open to it. That's really the big thing. More and more people are open to it than ever before. And I
Mhm.
think that that makes it super exciting because one of the things that they said on the telepathy tapes, that the kids said, is that the moment that we embrace this communication with telepathy, ooh, my ears are ringing. The moment we embrace this telepathy, the amount of leaps forward that humankind will have will, like, leaps and bounds past even the past like couple decades, right? It'll be like 10 years condensed into a matter of like a year or less, right? Because all of this information we'll have access to right away, because we'll have more access to the field of knowledge, the field of understanding that is consciousness, that is source, that is God, that is the universe. I don't care what you call it. In realizing that we've always been connected to it, and that we always have been it at the same time. And so I do think that that more and more of this stuff is coming out because it's time. It's time to create that change.
Yeah. And I think like how you were talking about your friend, like has to put effort in to like understanding what's going on with him. Just like me and my friends were having to put effort in. But my friend that was teaching it, it was effortless. Like
Yeah,
it
because he'd
very natural.
practiced. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's just like building a muscle, just like learning how to stay present, learning how to be more
Yes.
positive, learning how to be aware of what you're thinking and transmute those thoughts and feelings. It's the same thing as that, where we're just as capable. We just have to um have it be unconscious competence, and we're not
Yeah.
there yet.
Yeah.
And so then when it comes to like how you're saying like one day this is going to open up everything, Louise Hay, who we've talked about lots, in an interview, she said there's going to be a point in our world where something is going to happen where we have no internet, no cell phones, no communication, and the only way we'll be able to communicate is through telepathy. And the people that don't know how to do that will be cut off from the world.
Mm.
And that was one of the predictions she made when she was alive. So
Mm.
it's interesting that you say that. And two, with all the conspiracy theories and all the things that are going on in our world right now, there's a lot of people talking about AI stuff and what it could potentially do. There's a lot more so for you, like where grids are getting shut down because like you don't have enough of a battery bank. I don't know too much about that kind of stuff. And then with Donald Trump, there's a lot of talk about war. And so I can see that whatever Louise Hay predicted comes into fruition. And the thing too about it is whenever I look at those kind of things, they always seem like big, daunting, scary things, but they truly are just a step to the better. Like,
Right.
and I do believe that there's going to be some darkness that comes in the next little bit. I don't know how long a little bit is, whether it's 10 minutes, 10 years, I don't know. But I do think there's going to be some darkness. And um, it's kind of like when you do a parasite cleanse or when you do a detox or when you stop drinking alcohol or stop smoking, your body fucking hates you, you know? And like for me, I'm going off of sugar and my body that day I go off sugar because I follow Tim Ferriss's regime where I eat what I want 1 day a week. The day I go back after that 1 day, my body hates me.
Hmm.
And it hates me a little bit less every time I do it, but it doesn't like it very much at all. And so your body wants to keep things the same. And it also there's things that are designed to make us addicted, but that's a different conversation. What I'm trying to say is that when you are getting rid of the bad, it seems worse.
Hmm.
So as things are getting better, it feels worse, it seems worse. And I think there's going to be a lot of that. And I think that Donald Trump is already doing that. I don't know too much because I all my source of information is TikTok, but just with the whole red dye being banned, I don't know where that's all at, but like I'm sure there's going to be some bad as that gets filtered into fruition, but I think it's a good thing. You
Yeah,
know, I'm very
absolutely.
excited for how all the things that he's going to do and all the things that are going to happen, but I think there's going to be darkness around a lot of it.
Yeah, I mean, there's also, I mean, we could talk about Trump all day, and I don't really want to because he's not my favorite person. But and mostly because he can sometimes like he really sets off my husband because my husband is bisexual. I've talked about that before on this, and Donald Trump, and so he's very LGBTQ focused. He always has been. And Donald Trump, even on his inauguration day, was like, there's only a male and a female, and that is all. And so, and he heard, I was scrolling on TikTok and literally was on the video for maybe 10 seconds and then scrolled forward. And my husband was like, ugh, that man. And I was like, okay, okay, okay. But that's one of the biggest reasons that he's like, I just don't love that man because he can spew a lot of not nice things to people. And yeah, but anyways, I don't know. I have no idea what the next 4 years is going to bring with Donald Trump. As you mentioned, like there's talks of war, there's talks of changes with healthcare, there's talks of changes with what goes in our food system. I think them looking at our food is like, hello, we should have been doing this 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Like, this should never have been allowed, honestly. But it was because it was cheaper and
Yeah.
because it was more pleasing to the eye. And so people wanted to buy it. And so it was really, it just came down to marketing at the end of the day. And I do think that there's so much good that can happen, but there's also, yeah, there's going to be times of struggle. But I think that one thing that Dr. Joe says all the time is don't you know you need the challenge to change? You need
Mhm.
it. Okay. It doesn't necessarily feel good, but you need that challenge to change. So, why would you ever say, I don't want to do this? Like, if you want to level up in life as a collective or as a person, there needs to be a challenge. And I think that the beautiful thing happens when people do rise to a challenge and go, you know what? This is challenging, but the best thing that we could possibly do is figuring out how to connect more deeply with source. And that means falling in love with life that much more because that's how you connect with source. You fall in love. Like, hello, there is no greater example of the like source universe greater consciousness than love that and there's always more love. That's the beautiful thing. It's never ending. And one thing that I've discovered just through meditation is you think you've reached a new level of love. Like I've had experiences that I'm like, oh, that was it. That was, how could there be more? And then the next time I go again and I'm like, holy shit, there is more. And I barely even scratched the surface. And every time I go back and just ask myself, what would love do? And I step into my meditation, that's when it hits you, which you're like, oh my God, I didn't know my heart could explode like that ever. And so, kind of going back to the telepathy tapes too, the beautiful thing about those autistic kids is many of them are working off this higher frequency. And I say that because they all convene in a place that they call the hill. Okay. Like it is well known between autistic people that they're going to convene and they're going to meet up on a place called the hill, right? One thing that one of the kids said was you can't um, connect with that if you're going to be a liar, and you can't connect with that level of love that is the hill if you're going to be a liar, or if you're going to do bad things, basically, if you're going to be deceitful. Because one of the researchers was asking them, did you make this up, whenever they were saying that they were telepathic, and the kid was like, you can't connect with that level of love if you're going to be deceitful or if you're going to lie. There's no way. And so, like, I think, like, I truly believe that this podcast is one of many things that is going to come to light, not even just about autistic people. Autistic people is just the focus of this. But how many communities out there in the world, maybe there are communities in regions of the world that aren't touched by people very much, right? But there's a community, a culture there that all they do is they talk to each other telepathically. There are 100% cultures like that. What's the book I was reading? Masters of the Far East. Oh, what's it called? It's something like that. But it's a 5-book series, and it's basically talking about how these people live remotely from others, and they are so connected to each other, and they're so connected to source in such a beautiful way. I'm gonna have to look up the name of those books, because they're phenomenal, and it'll make you realize what you didn't realize you were capable of also. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, I think that's the coolest thing is like as you unlock, you realize so much more about your abilities. And that's something that's always stuck with me, even like from my Christian faith, is that Jesus said, like, if you have faith as small as a mustard seed, you can move mountains. And I believe that literally. So I've said before, I've always been more partial to the conspiracy theories.
Mm,
Um, and I had a lot of people in my life, like in my teenage years, that taught me a lot about different conspiracy theories. And I think it was my grade 9 teacher told me about how she believes that when we were closer to the ancient times, like in Europe, or not Europe, in Egypt and that kind of stuff, like
yeah.
we could do more
Yes.
and we were more connected. And so,
Mm.
like, the pyramids were not built by manual labor, they were built by us moving the bricks with our minds. I think people have alluded to that with the Great Wall of China too,
Mhm.
but I know for sure the pyramids definitely. And even when you look at like the technology in the pyramids, like it is past our understanding in a lot of ways, whereas like we as we are learning in our civilization, we're like, oh, that's what they were doing. That's what this was. We always thought that they were doing it for this reason. We always thought the pyramids were built like that for this reason. But now that we're learning more, um, in our current like 2025 year, what we're learning is realizing that they knew more than us,
Mhm.
and what they were doing with these pyramids was different than what we thought.
Yeah.
And I find that kind of stuff fascinating. And so I think that that's kind of the interesting thing is we went away from that like source infinite intelligence connection, and now we're moving back to it.
Mhm.
And like kind of like you were talking about with like the food changes and everything like that, like you think about the 90s and everyone's eating like lean cuisines
Ugh,
and
yeah.
like frozen dinner meals, or like the weight loss. I know I did a weight loss program when I was like 18, 19, because that was like the Weight Watchers thing was all in,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and I remember feeling awful. And I looked at the bars, the protein bars, and it was corn syrup. Like it
Yeah.
basically corn syrup bar that I was eating to lose weight. And I was just like, yeah, this does not make sense.
Mm-mm.
And yeah, so like I think those days are getting very, very far behind us. And even the people that aren't fully drinking the Kool-Aid, like myself, I think everyone's moving away from that anyways. Even now, like I'm vegetarian, but there's so many people eating a carnivore diet. And I think that's way better for you than like the frozen dinners or whatever it is.
Oh
Like
yeah.
or my partner, he was so used to eating like the pre-made meals kind of
Mm.
thing, like like even like pre-made salads or like pre-made like scalloped potatoes. They're freeze dried, and I think there's a lot of good where if like you're freeze drying from home, but when you're freeze drying and buying that box, there's so much added to it,
Mm-hmm.
and so he was so used to eating those like quick cardboard box meals.
Mm-hmm.
And if I ever have any of it, like I probably ate potatoes from a box like twice in my life. And I feel awful, like awful.
Mm-hmm.
And
Me too.
that's like what he lived off of.
Mm.
That was his normal. And I'm just like, everyone's kind of moving away from that. Like I walk down the aisles in Costco and it is so holistic
Mm-hmm.
based.
Yeah. I
It's
mean, we love Costco because everything is organic. We're like, we can eat this and we can eat this. Like, we love it.
I don't like Costco,
Mm,
but I'm one of those weirdos. I don't like the memberships and all that
that's
kind of
fair.
stuff. And um yeah, so I really hate scanning my card and I really hate scanning my receipt. And I get
Mm,
grumpy. But anyways, it's just a weird thing I have. But yeah, otherwise Costco's great. And yeah, it's just really cool. Like they have they're always doing like different taste testing kind of thing. And it's usually like this last time it was a whole bunch of apple cider cultured pop.
yeah, we love those. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, yeah, I'm just like, it's so cool. And I'm now going, I used to be really crunchy and really holistic, and then I got away from it a little bit. Still was more than the average person, but now I'm going back to being pretty crunchy again. And I switched up my diet considerably, and a lot of the stuff I need I can get at Costco, which is pretty cool.
Mhm.
And yeah, you go down their aisles and there's definitely some like KD and that kind of stuff, but for the most part it's pretty decent and it's just getting better and better. So
Yeah, yeah. So the name of that book, I had to look it up because I was like, oh, it's so good. It's called The Life and Teachings of the Masters of the Far East, and there's 5 volumes, and it's by T. Spalding Bard. It's so good. That was something that actually years ago Dr. Joe recommended, and I was like, oh, I'm curious. I read the first 2, and I still need to read the last 3, but they're so interesting because you see these cultures that have lived basically untouched by mainstream culture, right? They're not connected with that. And so I wanted to kind of like go back to what you were talking about, like with the pyramids and stuff like that too, because
mm,
I feel like that is important to talk about. So, you and I have talked about him before, Kevin Trudeau. He is basically, I don't know if he's a billionaire or just a multimillionaire. I'm not really sure, but he basically was a part of like the Brotherhood and all of the elite class groups of people, basically. And for years, he talks about how he would basically be parasitical off of like work off of the labor of other people, basically. So the unfortunate thing is that many elite class people have
yeah,
access to information like what they understand about the pyramids. They have access to a lot of things that like you and I don't necessarily have access to. But Kevin Trudeau decided he didn't like the parasitical thing that he was seeing within these elite groups. And he finally would just blew the whistle and was like, hey, by the way, these groups are hiding things from you. And one of the biggest things that he talks about is that they're hiding understandings that have been passed down through the elite class. So kings, queens, billionaires, millionaires, it's been passed down for years, from parent to child, generation upon generation. So, like, if I was to walk into, I don't know, Trump's house, and he would have access to books that I've never even heard of because these things are passed down through the family, right? And that information is kept within the family. Well, one thing that I find interesting is that within the past few years, more and more people are starting to understand many of the things that has been held back by the elites of the world, right? The elites don't want us to necessarily understand how powerful we are. They don't want us to understand how much we can control with our brain alone, right? Our thoughts and our feelings is what creates. They don't necessarily want us to realize that, because if we realize that, then we somehow become competition to them. So, on some level, many of the elite class have hit this level of understanding, but they've also like regressed in a lot of ways in that they don't want the competition. And that's very much a limited emotion. So somebody that is abundant mindset is like, no, everybody should know this because this is how we further along humanity. And there are people like Kevin Trudeau that's like, yeah, like we want to further along humanity. But then there's a lot of people in the elite class that are like, no, this should be kept between us and us alone because we don't want that competition out there. And that's just a really low frequency to have. But at the same time, they are really good at becoming abundant with money and connecting with people and things, right? But they still haven't quite figured out the abundance with allowing like everybody to understand what they're capable of, right? But the beautiful thing is that it doesn't matter because more and more people are starting to wake up and go, oh, I have access to this information, whether or not I see that document about the Great Pyramids or Egypt or whatever, like I can still connect with that. And that goes back to the autistic kids because the autistic kids will learn things like Spanish and nobody ever taught them how to do it. They learned on the hill. That's what they say. Oh, I learned how to do XYZ on the hill because my friend taught me how on the hill. Hello. Like, and the speed at which they learn too is phenomenal. What I find fascinating about that group of people, that community of people is that they're so connected together that the speed of learning is like instantaneous. And that is fascinating to me because I truly believe that they have hit this higher level of understanding, but I also know that there's so much more. That's what's even more fascinating to me. So I'm like, God, like, what don't they know? And how can we like harness what they know and then harness how much more there is? It's just fascinating to think about.
Well, and that's going back to like the pyramids.
Mhm.
Like you go back and you think about like Chinese medicine, you think about Egyptians, you think about the things that they knew, the things that they could do. And it's like, how did they know that? Like,
Right.
how did they know if you put like even like people that made bread? Like, how they know that this random wheat growing would be milled and then baked with these ingredients and
Mhm.
turned into bread? Like, how did we figure that kind of stuff out? And I understand like there is like scientists that figured out electricity and all that kind of stuff, but there's got to be some sort of like infinite intelligence when you look at like the pyramids and Chinese medicine and all that kind of stuff. Like you have to be connected. There has to be a faster way of learning
Mhm.
because to be that early on in civilization and be able to create that much, like I just there's no way that where we're at right now in our current reality in our current 3D that the best we've ever been as humans.
Oh
Like,
no, yeah.
not
Yeah.
when we've accomplished so much in so many different ways, with nothing,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
so
That honestly is probably one of the biggest reasons that I love meditation, because I do learn things, I feel, at a faster rate. I do
yeah,
understand things that I might not have understood sooner because I'm connecting more to that infinite intelligence. I don't think I'll ever forget this thing that Dr. Joe said on a call that I was on with him recently. He was talking about how an event that I was actually at, it was an event in Marco Island, Florida. It was the end of, when did we go? It was November 2024, right? So not that long ago. And he was talking about how during one of the meditations, he was saying that our group was like, really good. Like he's like, normally for a week long, there are people mixed in there that I really have to work hard to get you to understand what I'm saying. And he's like, from day one, I didn't have to work hard with our group. Like there was something about us that we just soaked everything in that he was saying and we were just ready to go, kind of thing. And he was like, that doesn't normally happen. So it was really exciting to experience that. But he said during one of the meditations, he said, that all of his hair on his body stood up, like this electromagnetic field was like really heightened around him, right? All the hair on his body stood up. And he just knew that everybody was creating exactly what they wanted in their future. Like that was, they were creating and they were in it and they were there already, kind of thing. And then he said during that meditation, he wasn't even necessarily meditating. I do believe that a lot of what he's doing whenever he's running the meditations is a meditation for him, just for because of what I've heard him say and how like he talks about like what I'm about to share is like understanding that yeah, he's meditating while we're meditating, even though he's leading the meditation. But he said that during that meditation, he leveled up to a new state of awareness, a new consciousness. And he was like, oh, I didn't know that I didn't know this. And he didn't really explain what he meant by that. But that's the beautiful thing about connecting to source, connecting to something greater than us. We realize that we didn't know what we didn't know. And now that's when the game is on, because now you can be like, okay, do I want to continue down this road to understand more of
yeah,
what I just learned? And practicing that is what creates that unconscious competence that you were talking about earlier, Ashley. Dr. Joe, it's the same thing. It's hilarious that him and Kevin Trudeau are so connected with what they say. That's why I loved Kevin Trudeau so much from day one. But Dr. Joe talks about it's unskilled or it's skilled God. It's skilled consciousness or something like that. My brain is not connecting it very well right now, but it's very much where you just you know something and you don't know how you know it. It's so ingrained in you and now it's just there. It's kind of like driving a car. You had to
yeah,
really work hard to drive a car once, but now you just get in the car and you don't have to think about it, right? You're just so unconsciously competent with it that you can do it without even thinking about it. So, yeah. But this was a good one. So I think we could come back and talk about this. I think we should probably do that because
definitely.
was a really good conversation. But guys, if you're listening and you loved what we had to say, go ahead and give us a like and a subscribe if you're listening on YouTube. And if you're listening on your favorite podcast host, go ahead and give us a 5-star. Let us know in the comments what your thoughts are too. We'd love to hear from you. So with that, we're going to call TMI Advice You Didn't Want a wrap for today. See everyone next time. Thanks so much for watching. Click on one of the videos below to continue hanging out with us and don't forget to subscribe.